G'day legends, I hope that you're really well. Now, a lot of people have pointed out to me that Willie, your cadence, the way you speak is very difficult to listen to. And I hear you, I read the comments, I look at the Telegram, whatever. I absolutely understand. And I made a transition about maybe 6 months ago from going from notes format through to written format to basically then put through to a teleprompter and speak off that. And I would put together 9 to 15 pages of writing and then speak to that. But I guess this makes it seem a little bit more robotic than a conversation with you, and that format probably just doesn't work for YouTube. But you will see that there was a massive extension in the videos. They went from 10, 15 minutes to 30, 40 minutes, and I was finding I was missing a lot less of information too, that I'd get it all across. When I was doing the other ones, I'd be like, oh, I forgot to say that. So I found it maybe more informative doing that, but I absolutely hear you, and I'm going to try out some different formats and go from there and try not to miss some bits. But that's why that happened, and I absolutely understand it, and thank you for the feedback. Now, I want to talk about as well, I guess, trauma and your exposure to this. Now, most people in their everyday lives, which is a great thing, have very little to no trauma experience. They don't experience it. Like, how often do you come across someone missing a leg, whatever? You just don't have that. But on the internet, you can give yourself a lifetime worth of exposure to trauma in 5 or 10 minutes. And this has been around for a while, but I think this conflict is so different with things like Telegram, GoPros, drones, it being so politically driven too, of these orgs, these UCROPs, whatever, as well, that exposure can be even further on that. And now, of course, there's an exception of people like paramedics, firefighters, policemen, soldiers in combat, but the average person just doesn't. And I really want to say that, give yourself a break occasionally, and as well, learn to pick up on things which you're like, oh, maybe I'm not thinking very right. And if you watch something that really affects you, you maybe need a break. And you're not a pussy, you're just a human. Like, the hardest guys that I know are the exact opposite of what you would expect, I guess, a hard guy to be. I remember very early in my career, a guy said to me that the toughest guys don't dream of this. They dream of sunshine and rainbows. And I had a very long conversation with a friend of mine who's actually a doctor who served in the SAS on many tours overseas about this as well. And if you'd like to check that out, give some good both stories but then tips as well on that. Actually helped him write a chapter in his book on resilience as well. Now, I know this is probably the longest intro ever, but YouTube are restricting me again. So, my Telegram is a good place for stuff, as well as my Patreon as well for, I guess, some uncensored stuff. But as well as if you'd just like to support me, the link's below, because YouTube just hate me. Now, we're going to talk today about defensive works, how some of these tactics may be playing out on both sides, and we're also going to have a look at the maps, and that is where we're going to start, as we have seen some offensive operations take place. Is this the offensive? I don't know. I think the big indication of where we're talking about, like the big offensive, which I'm not even convinced will come, because I thinking there's other ways of which asymmetrical warfare and different types of warfare can actually play without this massive push. But that's a story for another day. But I think if that's going to come, the real indicators are going to be seeing Leopards, Challenger 2s, and other vehicles. Now, we have seen some AMX-10s today, and we're going to talk about that too. But I think that will be the indication for that, where this could be it. I'm not saying it's not, but yeah, you get what I mean. Now, we're going to have a look on the map, and we'll talk about where exactly we're going to talk about. So, of course, we have Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas, these are occupied since 22, the purple since 14, and the green areas liberated since 22. Now, the first place we'll look is Belgorod. Now, this map, it only updates once every 24 hours, but so it hasn't updated very recently, but this is where we're talking about in this region of where those cross-border actions took place, both from the Polish and the Freedom of Russian Legion and the RDC. There's two of them, the RDK and the RVC. But where we've seen this cross is into here, and I believe that this map is incorrect. Currently, as it's 24 hours out of date, well, maybe more like 18, but either way, we basically have confirmation that this district here, this Novaya, and I won't try to pronounce that this is under control of these cross-border region guys who have gone in, and that they're still in control there, and there's been a number of high-ranking people both taken out, allegedly, and as well captured a high-ranking official as well, and there's talk about a swap back with Prigozhin as well.
Я Цезарь, представитель Легиона Свобода России. Как нам стало известно, бойцами ЧВК «Вагнер» был взят в плен командир 72-й бригады ВСРФ, находятся десятки доброй воли, но кавалер Ордена Мужества, губернатор Вячеслав Гладков, на заявленную встречу невелой армии России. Мы слышали о вас, Евгений Викторович, считаем, что вы тот самый. Мы предлагаем вам обмен мы предлагаем без каких-то того, что русские не будут пролетать.
Нахожусь в дороге, связь плохая. По поводу обменов. Подполковник 72-я бригада, он не в плен взят. Он был задержан и передан для проведения следственных действий. Ну и, естественно, никого из русских в обмен на русских мы отдавать не готовы. Хочу обратить внимание, что за украинской стороной есть еще небольшой должок по количеству отмененных пленных, поэтому попробуем напомнить о нем.
The true wild bit about this is the Wagner group captured the leader, Venevitsen, of the 72nd Battalion, but then from there, then the Legion troops are then trying to swap out the guys they took yesterday as prisoners for this leader. So you've got Russians, all looking inwards, trying to swap between. So it is so weird of what's going on. You've got Wagner, who has a Russian forces commander. Then the Russian Legion is trying to get that commander to give back the regular Russian forces they've got. So it's just all over the place of what it.
Внимательно. Давай. Ты кто?
Я подполковник Веневитин Роман Геннадьевич, командир 72-й.
Дальше. Что ты сделал?
Обстрелял машину ЧВК «Вагнер» в состоянии алкогольного опьянения.
Почему ты это сделал?
Из-за...
Почему у тебя личная неприязнь к ЧВК «Вагнер»?
Не знаю.
Что ты сделал вчера со своими подчиненными?
Разоружил группу ГБР ЧВК.
And of course, this is all in the Belgorod district too. But that's all that's being shown on the map. Now, we are getting told as well from Russian sources that in Berkhivka, which is to the northwest of the main area of Bakhmut, that this region has come under control or some control of the Ukrainian forces. Now, this map isn't showing it, and I can't find a legitimate map that is showing it, but it has come from Prigozhin as well. Now, Prigozhin has said when the NGSH and Shogu regrouped and stood along the Berkovsky Reservoir, and this is the reservoir here. They said this was in order to protect Berkovka settlement because they had very advantageous positions. A shame, Shogu Gerasimov, I urge you to come to the front, raise an army with pistols so that they go forward. Come on, you can, and if you can't, die a hero. So we don't know exactly where the front line sits in here. Was it come down from here? Was it up through here? Maybe along this southern edge. That would make the most sense. But that is the situation there that we're talking about. Now, where we have seen a lot of movements is in and around this area here. Now, I will be pronouncing some of this wrong, and I do apologise for that. And also the translation between the English to Russian, English to Ukrainian can make these seem different names as well. And there are some areas in here which are very similarly named in translation get a bit mixed. But we have some geolocated stuff, the footage, and as well, not all the footage I can show you. But we have some statements from in here as well of areas that have come under control. Now, what we're first going to do is look at a statement from the deputy head of the National Guard of the Donetsk People's Republic, Alexander Kodolovsky. The enemy managed to cling to Novodonetsky, but he paid a considerable price. About 10 units of destroyed armoured vehicles, including one tank, were confirmed, dozens killed. In general today, the balance is in favour of the enemy, but he failed to go deep into our territory. So Novodonetsky, let's have a look at where this is. So this is in this region here, and they just said that this has come under control. So this is where we are looking, and as well, looking here, this is the ISW map. Don't worry about the green dot for now. Now, the only maps that I can find that are updated, more than once a day, and of course they are a Russian source, but is the Rybar maps. And we actually had 2 releases today. So we're going to look at the 2 p.m. one, and here we have Novodonetsky, and then one got released at 6 p.m. So then we have Novodonetsky here. Now, luckily Rybar for us has given us a zoom in on these regions. So here we have on the, I've changed this one, my bad. On the 2 o'clock, we have only a partial taken of Novodonetsky, and by 6 o'clock, so 4 hours later, we have a full taking of this settlement, this town of Novodonetsky. Now, along the front, has much else really changed between these two? Not really. Now, I think near Rivnopol as well, we do see that this front line has come in a little bit, but this map isn't good enough really to show that, as they're on just a little bit different, not different scales, but with the icons moving, I can't tell if in Rivnopol that has changed much as well, but it shows where the movements have changed from 2 p.m. and where they were pushing to 6 p.m. Now, interestingly, in this, it does state Leopard 2 and fighting vehicles. Now, we haven't seen any evidence of Leopard 2s being in action, and we have seen some misinformation come out about this as well. And let's talk about this. Now, there were multiple photographs. So this photograph came out on the left. I'll just zoom in for now, of this, of looking like a Leopard 2. And it does look like a Leopard 2 with its turret in reverse. It does look like that, and tanks transport, whatever, with the turret in reverse. But people have pointed out, and this is an AMX-10, which is a French, the not a tank thing, but this is the one here. Now, this is the tracked variant. We know Ukraine got reportedly about 40 wheeled variants, and the hatches seem to line up more closely to this, as well as the front areas on this. And we've actually seen more of these today as well. So we're starting to see these AMX-10s. Now, does this indicate the offensive? Well, I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys to think about. But here we have the AMX-10s here, 1 and 2. It does seem to show more of the equivalent hatch layout that the AMX-10 does offer. Now, what we're comparing is this photograph here, and we have a top-down view here as well. Now, of course, this isn't perfect, but I think the hatch layout matches it more so. But I'm happy to be incorrect on that. I think the other thing too, which is different from the from the Leo, from the Leopard, you see where it curves in at the front here, and this is indicative of the AMX, the French wheeled, not a tank killer vehicle. So I think that is an interesting thing to talk about as well. Let's just have a look at how much different these maps show to each other. Here we have Velika Novosilka here, so this is the region here, and we're looking at these 2 towns here just to get an idea of where we are, and then we'll come down and we have Novodonetsky in here. So where we're seeing that the Rybar Russian source is showing a big difference. So see this waterway through here? This is running down through here, and this is showing that they've pushed a fair way off this waterway. So basically down into here somewhere. Now, I can't draw this on a map because the scales, whatever, will be wrong, but you can see if we take this waterway as something, that it shows a very different picture. And this is this reservoir here, the reservoir here. So it's pushing right down into this region here somewhere. So it is showing a big difference as well. And look at the ISW, waterway pushing right down somewhere to here. So we have Starolinivka in this region, and we can see that, let's say from the waterway to there, roughly halfway. So down in here somewhere. So it has been a big change on the map, and we will see the ISW Deep State change after today and give us some more updates on that. Now, we have seen another change in here as well, and this is from War Mapper's map, and we're looking in and around Novodorivka, which is to the west of where we are looking. So where we were looking is here. This is Velinka, Novosilka, and then we're looking down into here. And what War Mapper is showing is that Ukrainian forces have made more leeway from Novobil, which is here, into Novodorivka. Now, this is showing that they have taken over an area of this, and that there is grey zone contested region around here. But it is showing different again. So if we take where this border region comes down to the south, this is the border region to the south. So it's showing that the grey zone is down into here, but the actual township, I guess, of Novodorivka, at least the northern part, is coming under control. So the maps are showing movements to the south, and this is what a lot of people have talked about. is this push to the south and what is going on from there. And if we have a look, we can actually see that this is one of the least defended regions as far as if we take the Russian satellite view of where the defensive positions are. So the region we're talking about is in and around here. Now this isn't perfect, but this is about the region we're looking at. Now this is Berdyansk, this is Vyalta, and then Mariupol sits in here. So people have been speculating for a long time that the push is going to come down into here to essentially cut off this southern region here. Now that is just speculation at this point, but that is what people have been speculating and looking at that defensive map as well. Now, we are going to look at some of the attacks in this region that have been geolocated, and there has been a lot of lost equipment here as well. And we are going to start seeing a lot more Ukrainian lost equipment. We will see Western equipment given to Ukraine lost as well, just because when you go on the offensive, you are going to lose stuff. It's just going to happen. We're going to see challenges. We're going to see Leopards. We're going to see Bradleys. We're going to see lots of stuff getting damaged, killed, whatever. It's just the way offensives work. But we have had this video here as well, geolocated from here. Now I can't show you this, but this shows a handful of Ukrainian MRAPs here advancing on a position from here, and these get intercepted by artillery and drones and taken out. And this was actually geolocated into this region. So where we've just spoken about was we spoke about Novopil, we spoke about Novodonetsky, and then what we're speaking of was in here. So they pushed a long way into this region. Then we also have footage here as well of a tank battle consisting of 3 Russian tanks, 2 Ukrainian tanks. The 2 Ukrainian tanks are here. Now there is a Russian tank here, one in the tree line as well, and another one. Now I can't show you this footage, but a Russian tank gets hit by people claiming it's a tank-on-tank battle. It's not a tank-on-tank. Well, it is a tank-on-tank battle, but the tank on the far away side that we're seeing here, which is said to be the Russian tank, was definitely not taken out by one of these tanks. It comes from a different direction, and to me, looks down like a top attack weapon, so Jav, in-law something, maybe drone, we don't know, but was taken out and then burns around here. Now, I can't show this, but it will be on my other channels, and that was then geolocated into this region here, where we have seen a lot of changes, and that is the same region of which we have just spoken about down from Novopil, of where Warmapper shows some dramatic changes. And we also have footage said to be the same MRAP vehicles as well, getting here engaged by Russian attack helicopters as well. And this is going to lead into something I'm going to talk about in a second with the air defence, and where the hard decision is going to have to be made for the air defence coming up. Now, something I should have shown you when we're talking about Bakhmut, but is this translated video. Now, this was from very Russian sources, but this was also geolocated. And this is something I've talked about as well, that we're going to talk about. This is in Chasiv Yar, that there's locals left, but the majority are kill cases. Well, there are people who are just afraid and won't leave. We saw this in Bakhmut, we saw this in areas as well, but they want to move further. But the majority is waiters, talking waiters. Now, people who wait are people who wait for the Russians. Now, you have to remember that, Ukraine and Russia broke apart from the Soviet Union only 30 years ago. There are a lot of people in Ukraine. Is it the majority? No. But in the east, there's a lot of people who are on the pro-Russian side. This became a big problem for partisans. I remember even when I was working to the northeast of Kharkiv, people being like, hey, be very bloody careful, because there are people here who will take a pot shot of you out of a window, or will call in artillery, whatever, working against them. And that does exist. People say it doesn't, but it does exist. In some regions, it was the majority before the war. Definitely was in some regions, but now that has greatly shifted with Russia's invasion. Now the majority are on the pro-Ukrainian side, but there are people who are waiting to Russia, and there have been hundreds of thousands, millions of people go to Russia. Now, the majority who have left Ukraine, yes, have gone into the EU and on from there, but there has been a lot of people also move into Russia as well. But they are waiting. And here we talk about what I was saying. They give information about where their armour is placed, positions, storages, things like this. And this is just the opposing of what we have with the pro-Ukrainian people stuck in the occupied territory as well, calling out then the Russian stuff working as partisans. And then those positions get shelled. No, now that has been geolocated to here in Chasiv Yar as well. So here we have Bakhmut and Chasiv Yar. So Ivanovsky, Kramove, anyone who's followed me, we know this region very well. So we'll just show you here. So this is Chasiv Yar, Bakhmut, Kramove, Ivanovsky. Same region. I think you'll get the gist of it. You guys are far more intelligent than I am. Now, we're going to talk about defensive measures and a few things, and I'll cut to and from because I need some notes on this. So, as I'm filming this, there are a minimum of 6 Tu-95 aircraft, which are Russian bombers, in the air that will most likely, again, fire more drones, more missiles, whatever, onto Ukraine's air defence and go from there. And people, why they're doing this, having a very low success with the air defence. Well, let's talk about the idea that Russia keep hitting areas like Kiev, Dnipro, areas like main civilian centres like this, and targeting things, basically so Ukraine has to make the decision, the impossible decision, to relocate their air defence to protect the offensive or to protect their citizens. And we know these air defence systems currently are at like a 90% or greater success rate of this. But Ukraine will need to move their air defence capability closer to the front line. So I think we'll probably see the decision. I think we'd have to see this decision because Russia has the air power in those areas at the moment. But this will be a reduction in air defence effectiveness then over the city. And let's look at this MOD. Over the course of May 23, Russia launched 300 Iranian Shahed Series one-way attack drones, I'm just going to say drones, against Ukraine. Its most intense use of the weapon to date. So what I believe this is, and we're going to talk about this more, is mating to hold those systems in place so it doesn't give Ukraine the advantage of the air defence in the other regions. And I think we'll keep seeing these, even if it's just these cheap drones. Russia need to make sure Russia keep those systems, which are so effective, in regions of which they're not trying to defend. Russia is probably launching many drones in attempts to force Ukraine to fire stocks of valuable advanced air defence missiles. So talking to Patriot and the expense here as well. But I believe it's two-pronged. Yeah, it's definitely that, but there's also keeping that system there too. Russia is unlikely to have been notably successful. Ukraine has neutralised at least 90% of the incoming drones, mostly using older and cheaper air defence weapons with electronic jamming. Now, we don't have legitimate evidence of that, but EW is very effective and of course, is very difficult to actually prove as well. Russia has also likely been attempting to locate and strike Ukrainian forces well behind the line. However, Russia remains very ineffective at hitting such dynamic targets at range because of its poor targeting process. Now, of course, this is from the MOD of the UK, and the UK is they are completely on the side of Ukraine. So these fit into the narrative as well. But I think that is interesting. But what we need to look at is that Russia keep firing these even if they're having a very low success rate. Now, this was backed up as well by the Kiev Post recently. The US-made air defense systems have been exceptionally busy in Ukraine in recent weeks, intercepting missiles, drones launched by Russia in almost nightly attacks on the capital. Despite very little damage being done at the huge financial cost to Moscow, some analysts believe the Kremlin's tactics is to force Ukraine to choose between defending its cities or defending its troops when they launch the counter-offensive. And that seems to go in line as well with what I was saying. I think there's this myth that defensive measures are to stop things moving. That is incorrect. Now, things like tank traps, the bloody triangle things, whatever you people call them, they call them all sorts of different shit. But these are for multiple things. Now, stopping someone moving would be fantastic. That would be the best case. But we know modern vehicles, modern engineering, blowing things up, moving through, that is just not going to happen. So you have two ways. You delay the enemy, so you make them go slow, so they have to bring engineers forward, blow through it, whatever, they have to clear minefields, things like that. And as well, funneling, moving the enemy to areas in which you've set up. So, you set up a wire obstacle, for example, and you've got a defensive position here in the wire obstacle, the troops will hit and run up the side of it, and then you've got a machine gun or something to engage from there. That's how defensive measures work. Can we move through wire obstacles? Yes, we can. Engineers have specific explosives to basically cut them like a big pair of shears and move through. But that delays again, so things like that's for delaying and fighting on where you want to specifically fight. So I've got a lot of stuff here, and I've got stuff out of the Marines Handbook, from some other stuff sent across to me as well about defence, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that. So when I talk about fighting in areas and having areas where you create kill zones, you can have your artillery already sighted on those regions. So once they hit there, you can have positions which you will fall back out of to just delay from there, and that is a real thing, as well as you will fight on the lay of the land of which you want to. So let's have a look over some of this. So constructing obstacles. And this, I should say, is out of the Marines Handbook, but only up to sort of platoon size. So we're going to go into larger size in a second, but this is more of what I've had experience on defence positions and constructing things, kill zones for things like that. So the squad may be ordered to construct obstacles such as barbed wire, log and brush barriers, ditches, and hasty protective minefields in order to slow the enemy's advance. But not only slow them, but to shift the enemy into areas of which we are on the best side for you to then fight on. While the offensive is the most decisive type of combat operation, the defensive is the stronger role. The inherent strengths of the defence include the defender's ability to occupy his positions before the attack and use the available time to prepare his defences. Preparations only end when the defender retrogrades or begins to fight. The defender can study the ground and select defensive positions that mask the effect of his fires on likely approaches. He combines the natural and man-made obstacles, canalize the attacking force into his EAs, engagement areas. He can coordinate and rehearse his defensive plan while gaining intimate familiarity with the terrain. And these are all things of why the defence has the upper hand in this. And we're going to talk about a few things as well that I found very interesting, and we'll talk about some of the other defence. So we have as well, the disengagement line is a phase located on identifiable terrain. When crossed by the enemy, signals to defending elements that it is time to displace to the next position. So pushing back. Now I've spoken to you guys again about Australia that we had at one point, that if a larger power came in the north, that we would delay moving back and wear out the logistics moving to the rearwards and hit in guerrilla warfare type of that thousands of kilometres across the desert are planning and considerations. On the onset of the attack, the defending commander yields the initiative to the enemy. However, he exploits prepared, mutually supported positions organised for all-round defence and uses his knowledge of the terrain to slow the enemy's momentum. The defending force maintains security and disrupts the enemy's attack at every opportunity. The defending commander hinders enemy offensive preparations by using long-range fires and deep manoeuvre to reduce the force of the enemy's initial blows and to start the process of wresting the initiative from the enemy. So it draws the enemy into engagement areas where he can initiate combat on his own terms. This is the thing about defensive, is you create these on your own terms in ground of your choosing. The commander surprises the enemy as concentrated or integrated fires violently erupt from concealed and protected positions. Now, with the amount of intelligence, satellites, whatever given from the West also to Ukraine, some of the surprise is taken, but there will be some little surprises, especially for when you're talking individual soldiers. The defending force does not have to kill every enemy soldier, squad, or combat system to be successful. It only has to destroy the enemy's ability to synchronise their combined arms team or will to fight. Those events signal a transition period that affords the defending commander the opportunity to seize the initiative and return to the offence. Now, this is what we saw the main failure of the Russian forces in the beginning of, where we have the defending force does not have to kill everyone. They just have to destroy the enemy's ability to synchronise combined arms. This is what we saw go to shit when Russia first came in, was their combined arms, synchronisation, mutually supporting, went to shit. And then you've got elements moving independently, and then it just completely went to shit. So that is what you're trying to break, is this combined arms force. And this is what we have seen Russia not really be able to conduct yet, is between these planes, choppers, tanks, infantry, and that properly mutually combined arms. A delay is a form of retrograde, which is a force under pressure, trades space for time by slowing down the enemy's momentum and inflicting maximum damage on the enemy without, in principle, becoming decisively engaged. So pulling back without getting engaged. Say Australia, let's say China. If China actually came in, landed in the north of Australia, if we became decisively engaged, we would lose that fight. But if we delay, pulling back, we then take ourselves out of that decisive engagement and hit and come back. The delay is one of the most demanding on all ground combat operations. The delay wears down the enemy so that the friendly forces can regain the initiative through offensive action. So delay and then strike behind. Buy time to establish effective defence or determine enemy intentions as part of the security operation. Normally, delay inflicting casualties on the enemy is secondary to gaining time. Exploit the advantages of key terrain. This is what we've talked about. The defending commander exploits the defending force's advantages of occupying the terrain where the fight will occur. The defending force engages the attacker from locations that give the defending force an advantage over the enemy. These locations include defilés, rivers, thick woods, swamps, cliffs, basically anything, and made up stuff. So defense positions should be existing and reinforced obstacles. So say you've got a river that you can't ford across one area, and you can draw the forces down with tank traps or wire obstacles, or even by fire as well, draw them into an area then of your choosing. The commander may choose to shape the battlefield by defending one area and deny terrain to the enemy while delaying in another area to deceive the enemy commander into believing he has achieved success. So lead them through and achieve success. Now, something I want to talk about on that point is in the Kharkiv offensive, where we saw the Russians basically left out to dry and Ukraine pushed through on the offensive. Now, what I will say is we have not seen Ukraine conduct an offensive on the level which they have to. We've seen Ukraine conduct offensive in Kherson, Kyiv, and Kharkiv, And the thing is, none of those were anywhere near as manned, as defended, as critical, absolutely, for the next stage of where these positions are. So we haven't really seen a good example of this. But in Kharkiv, what the Ukrainian partisans did, and this wasn't reported too much, but the partisans working for Ukraine behind the Russian lines were putting up Ukrainian flags on top of buildings and structures. So if you are holding this and, we believe we're the front line here, and, there's offensive coming, next thing Ukrainian flags getting put up behind you, that is deceiving the people in those and going, holy shit, they've come around behind us, and then forcing to pull back. This is why we saw so little real defence in that region at all get scattered, was those partisans working in operations like that. And if anyone's listened to me talk about asymmetrical warfare, partisan actions like that absolutely are essential and critical to something like this. Now, the survivability, since the attacking force usually has the initiative in terms of where and when it will attack, the defending commander must take a wide range of actions to protect his force due to enemy actions. So what Ukraine has in this, they are the attacking force. They can choose when and where to attack, and they have a lot more freedom of movement than the dug-in already positions. So if they just choose to attack in the north, where there's no dug-in positions, then the ones in the south become useless. So that is what the attacking force or the offensive force has on their side. The survivability effort for the defence must enable units to concentrate firepower from fixed positions to avoid detection and destruction by the enemy units, and move frequently and establish survivability positions quickly. So they have to be able to be somewhat flexible. And armoured movements in defence gives this more so than infantry as well. But no country in the world has enough tanks to have a complete armoured hold across thousands of kilometres of front line. To provide flexibility, units may need primary, alternative and supplementary positions. So you'll have different positions along the line as you go, which can add into the delay as well. This is particularly true of units defending key or decisive terrain. Units enhance their survivability through concealment, deception, dispersion, and field fortification. Survivability tasks include engineering equipment to trenches, command posts, shelters, things like that. We've seen Russia using everything from mining equipment through to bobcats, Katos, everything to dig in positions like this. Now, the commander should avoid predictable defensive preparations because an enemy will tend to attack lightly defended areas, major positions, facilities, operation, logistical centres. So sites may require special camouflage measures that provide protection that include constructing dummy positions with decoys. And we've seen Ukraine with a lot of dummy vehicles such as HIMARS, things like this as well, to draw fire. That said, a lot of these predictability as far as where things are with the use of drones, satellites, spies, partisans, things like that become very, very difficult. And that's why the partisans are a big deal of this. Now, from a friend who writes, and this isn't word for word, but Ukraine's goal is not to destroy the enemy. This is impossible without attacking Russia itself, which we have seen some small attacks, but we're not on large scale, but rather to force Russia to vacate by destroying their will to continue, making losses so high that the continuation is not worth it and support in Russia decreases. So anyone who's seen what I talk about in asymmetric warfare, the smaller force does not have to win. They just have to not lose and let the bigger force wear themselves out. This is like a bigger fighter fighting someone who is smaller. Not always guaranteed to win. The bigger fighter will wear out quicker. Russia, with its logistical demand, things like this, and can wear out quicker. So they don't have to win, they just have to not lose. And saying that if they can hit Russia so they're not having success anywhere, that the support will drop. There will be inwards facing civilians and oligarchs, political figures, even Prigozhin, Kadyrov, guys like this, that goes from there. They don't have to win, they just have to not lose. And they talk about this goes into Crimea as well. Now, there's someone called Tactics Innovation, and he calls this the fight to the sea. That if Ukraine can get to the sea, they don't have to win the West. They just have to not lose. That said, they will have two front lines, but on the east and west, and attacking in on that because Russia knows they can't let this happen. Now, what is the fight to the sea? So let's say the offensive did start in this region here. The fight to the sea is coming down into here to cut off this region here near the Sea of Azov, cutting off this region from resupply, only coming through the Kerch Bridge here into Crimea. What does this do? Well, this leaves the troops here basically without resupply, and Ukraine has shown that it can hit areas in Sevastopol where Russia could resupply by a Navy ship, but Navy ship resupply is nowhere near the same as resupplying off train, truck, whatever, just nowhere near efficient. So if they can come down, cut off this region, these troops out here, then Ukraine doesn't have to win, they just have to not lose, but they're going to open themselves up to two ways. So here we have the fight to the sea, the stage 4. That the hardest part to predict and plan for is the goal to cut off the main logistics line to Crimea, which is by the sea. And now when talking about tanks too, it needs to be noted that the majority of tanks are still, they're not killed by tank-on-tank war. Tank-on-tank warfare is not very common. They're not killed in the majority by ATGM, tank munitions, so things like JAVs, NLAWs, and guided munitions as well. The majority of tanks are still killed by artillery. And in these regions, Russia still has a absolute huge amount of artillery, and because, like we've spoken about, defense positions, those artilleries can already be in the area to hit. So it is going to be one hell of a fight. But legends, that's it for me today. Now, let me know what you thought of this, doing it a different way to what I normally do. Let me know if this was better, worse, shit, great, whatever. If you comment, even if you hate me and comment, that helps my algorithm. So that's great. Again, if you'd like to support me, support below. Never feel obliged. I just appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great week. Okay, bye-bye.